It's significant. It is nonstop. I always tell people coming into news, and this is regardless of where you're going, if you're going to do it well, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. Because the thing about the news is there's planned events and there's things we know that are going to happen. But most of it doesn't cooperate with your holiday schedule, doesn't cooperate with your weekend, it doesn't cooperate with your sleep schedule. The number of times I was awoken in the middle of the night because something's happened in the world.
Today, we're joined by an award-winning journalist, media innovator, and the voice behind one of the fastest-growing news platforms on social media, Mosheh Oinounou. Mosheh is the founder and editor-in-chief of Mo News, a social-first, trusted news brand delivering reliable, verified, and balanced reporting across Instagram, podcast, and newsletter. With an eye for storytelling and a passion for public trust, Mosheh has built an interactive media experience that cuts through the noise, providing millions with daily analysis on politics, business, global affairs, and pop culture. Before launching Mo News in 2020, Mosheh led national and international newsrooms as an executive producer at CBS News, Fox News, CNBC, and Bloomberg TV. At CBS, he made history as the youngest ever executive producer of the CBS Evening News. Was that the one that had to settle with
60 Minutes did.
that 60 Minutes, yeah.
But I know some of the people over there.
Yeah, but that was not you. Overseeing a team of more than 150 and coverage of global events from the war on ISIS to presidential interviews. An Emmy, Murrow, and Webby Award winner. You're going to have to explain those. I've heard of an Emmy. I haven't heard of a Webby. Mosheh continues to push boundaries from headlining TEDx Nashville to being featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Forbes, and Politico as a leading voice redefining journalism in the digital age. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Matthews Mentality Podcast. Mosheh, welcome to the Matthews Mentality Podcast.
It's good to be here.
Welcome to Nashville.
It's great to be in Nashville.
You said the last time you were here was the TED Talk.
Was the TED Talk 3 years ago, and you guys keep building and building and building.
You know what? You New Yorkers could take note. If you let them build and oversupply, especially in residential, you will see rents come down. But that is a real estate conversation for a different day. Walk me through a TED Talk. I mean, I just feel like you get on this stage, and I watched yours. There's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
I mean, is it nerve-wracking?
Very much so. I think it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. Like, it sort of reminded me, it took me back to like high school traumas, like ahead of like a big exam,
Yeah.
or like taking the SAT. Now there are some smaller TEDx's where like they'll have a teleprompter for you. At TEDx Nashville, they're like, there's no teleprompter.
Did you have anything?
No.
Because I watched it and I was like, I wonder
No.
if there's like a screen down there that you can reference.
All there is a clock.
Ooh.
You got 16 minutes. You got to memorize a speech. And so it was an interesting process going through it because it probably began 9 months earlier on topics and then edits. And then, they had an advisor for me. Tweak it this way, tweak it that way. And then you get to the stage of memorizing it and, coming up with your slides, et cetera. And so like coming up with that model of like, okay, I need to think about 16 minutes through bullet points. What are my 25 bullet points? And how do I like trigger the next thing with the previous thing? So it was an incredible challenge, but probably one of the more fulfilling things that I've done.
Yeah,
and very unique in that I've done a lot of things professionally, but that in of itself is probably one of the hardest things.
And it was very well watched and very well received. And walk the audience through. The topic was, and I'm paraphrasing, trusted news.
Yeah.
How did that kind of come about to where either they reached out to you, said, hey, I want to give this speech, and then let's talk about trusted news.
So that's been a core component of what I've been trying to do on social media. And over the course of, it began during COVID. And then over the course of 2021, picked up a lot of followers, including, it turns out, some people who worked with TEDx in Nashville.
Okay.
So they reached out to me saying, hey, I'm a fan of your Instagram account. We would love to have you talk about the lessons you're learning about the media and trust in Nashville. Would you be open to it? And so that's how that process began.
So I want to call attention and really drive viewership to that TED Talk you can find on YouTube. I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, that's where I watched it. But if we can just summarize the talk in a minute or two for the audience, because I don't want to spend 16 minutes on the speech, but
and I've forgotten certain parts of it over the last 3 years.
Yeah.
I think the core part of it lies in my story and how my path through media what it's taught me about the media and America. And especially in what I've learned going to social media. You know, you mentioned some of the traditional organizations I worked at, huge audiences. But for those, you know, who have been paying attention in the last couple of years, going through a huge earthquake. I mean, like
Sure.
a
Yeah, just
massive
a change.
earthquake,
Just a
massive change
fundamental change. Yeah.
in terms of the platforms, the technology, social media, audience interest, trust, a whole variety of things out there. And coming to social media and starting to engage people in a real way, really beginning with friends and family. Like, it was COVID, my friends and family were trying to seek basic information. I had just left media. I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I was just trying to be a resource to people. And so ultimately, the lessons I learned as I picked up 10,000, 100,000, several hundred thousand viewers on Instagram was that people were in desperate need for someone, an individual they could trust, they could ask questions to, they could have a dialogue with. And it's something that we've taken for granted and not done well in traditional media, which is sit every day. And this is a part of what I talked about in the address, like at a CBS or at a Fox News. And we're like, well, we'll put this on TV tonight and millions will watch. And the next day we'll come in the next day and be like, okay, what should we put on TV? With no actual conversation with the audience, no feedback mechanism for the audience besides, oh, we lost 20,000 viewers last night. Okay, we gained 1 million viewers last night. I wonder what that was too. And that you can try, but really news was more an art than a science. And so what we discovered over time was that news and building trust requires a conversation with the audience, requires you to be transparent with the audience. It really, what people are seeking these days is community and individuals that they can engage with and that will also be honest with them when they screw up. You know, that was something I also got frustrated with in the media. And then one other element is cover things that matter to people. Because I think what we ended up doing in the media and what they're still doing today is going to the most sensational, most extreme voices. And it is not a reflection of what's happening in the country. So it should therefore be no surprise that people are turning away from, you know, traditional news media.
Why? This is a real question I have. Why do they do that? And so I'm going to like play down the middle here. Why does CNN or MSNBC say something about, you know, the other side that I feel like they know isn't true, or they allow someone to come on to, you know, kind of just speak in a way where like, well, those are opinions, not facts, but you're stating them as facts. And then let me take the other side. Like, why would Fox News do the same thing just in reverse? Like, I'm like, you guys are the news. Just say this is what happened,
Yeah.
and let the audience decide. If you have someone come on, have like a competing voice, but they just don't do that. And I was like, there has to be a financial drivers that I miss because I'm not in that industry that tells them like, no, you really have to tack to your side of the political spectrum.
The financial driver is number one. And cable news really discovered this going back to the early 2000s. And who discovered it first? Fox News. They discovered, you know, that their opinion programming at night that all leaned right was doing incredibly well.
Yeah.
And their viewers wouldn't tune in for a few minutes, but were tuning in for hours on end. Actually, you know, fun story at Fox. The viewers were tuning in so long that the logo was burning into people's TV screens.
Wow.
And so they changed the logo at Fox to constantly turn so it wouldn't burn into people's screens. Like that was the problem. I'm watching so much of your network. I've ruined my television.
That's my father-in-law, man. Like that logo probably burned into his screen for sure.
I imagine next time he turns it off, see what's there. And just to give you an example, the average viewer of Fox was watching, you know, when I was there, this is more than 10 years ago, but it's still reflective of today, 3 to 4 hours a day, Fox, right? The average viewer of CNN was watching how many minutes of CNN?
Just because you're an hour? I don't know.
They wish. 12 minutes.
12 minutes.
9 to 12 minutes.
And that's because CNN, like when I was coming up, it was just the news. It's like, hey, this is the news,
Yeah.
The most trusted news. I don't know if that's their slogan, but like, yeah, they just present the news, and Fox was something different.
Yeah.
And I guess they were probably getting killed on the ratings.
And so it turns out that if you just do the news, sometimes there's boring news days, right?
Understood.
If you don't like find something that either is ridiculous or create debates, ultimately, like, hey, by the way, one thing happened today. You guys you're free to live your day. Well, that's not good business wise, right? That might be good like for accuracy purposes. That might be good societally. It might be good psychologically for people. But ultimately, it's not good as a business thing. So what did we see? Suddenly, who takes cues from Fox? And we'll do like the cable news history here, MSNBC. They discovered during the Bush era with Keith Olbermann and some of the liberals that, like, you know what, we're going to be a counterweight to Fox. And these liberal shows are really rating really well.
Mm.
Let's build someone around Oberman. Let's bring in this Rachel Maddow and so on and so forth. And so then you see that. And meanwhile, CNN's still sitting there like 9 minutes a day, right? 12 minutes a day. So you saw in the 2010s, particularly around, they start to make that pivot at CNN.
Okay.
And so that's ultimately why, there is a business case there. I mean, you got into your question some deeper things there, which it can speak to reporter and editor bias. Like, let's be frank. I worked in this world. It is overwhelmingly liberal, right? So some people's personal viewpoints certainly bleed into the coverage and the angled approach they take. But there is a business case of like, well, what did well, what didn't do well? What stories did well? What stories didn't do well? What guests did well? What guests didn't do well? And we'll look at all of that. And over time, you'll see an evolution there. Because at the end of the day, in America, outside of PBS, it's a for-profit. The media and news is for-profit. And if you're trying to make a profit, you need eyeballs. You need eyeballs because you're selling advertising.
Yeah. Because advertisers know how many people are watching, and nowadays social media, how many clicks or how many downloads,
and you've developed an audience that now wants to be fed. This is sort of a precursor to social media because you're giving them stuff that they like reinforces their
it's like
views.
reinforced bias. Like it's like, well, let's give them more, and then that's all it is.
Like we saw a collapse. I was at Fox at the end of the Bush administration, and if you recall, it was a bad time to be a Republican, right? You had the financial collapse. You had Katrina. Iraq wasn't going well. Fox News ratings were going to the dumper. Ironically, the person who did the most for Fox ratings was Barack Obama, because Fox suddenly becomes the opposition network. But the lesson taken away at that network, and I would soon leave in 2009, I would leave Fox, was, I don't know how much bad news we should give our people about what's going on. And so you see the evolution over the course of the past 15 years where it becomes less and less and less. And now you start to see alternate realities. So if you watch an hour of one of them, you're seeing different Americas.
The echo chamber, it's depending on what the blue or the red team and the channel you're watching, you would be like, these must be two different presidencies or two different people they're talking about. You're like, no, it's the same person. It's just two different lenses they're viewing this thing and they're judging and evaluating. I'm going to kind of jump around here. I mean, your executive producer was a CBS Evening News, a huge show.
Yeah.
I'll get to kind of going through your life and career arc, but like, let me just jump to this very big position. Walk me through what does the day in the life look like of that? I mean, it seems like a really stressful job. How many days a year do you do the evening news? But then the second part is like, why do you leave that?
So it's 365 days a year, right? Because we do weekend news. So, I mean, minus there are a couple days because we were CBS, so there would be college football or NFL, but you had more than 300 shows a year.
Did you have to do all 360 plus?
I wasn't there every day. I was there for the Monday through Friday.
Gotcha.
But
Okay.
I would work with the weekend folks on like, what are we going to work on this weekend? But ultimately, I'm overseeing about 250 shows a year.
I was say, because that's a significant pace.
It's significant. It is nonstop. I always tell people coming into news, and this is regardless of where you're going, if you're going to do it well, it's not a job, it's a lifestyle. Because the thing about the news is there's planned events and there's things we know that are going to happen. But most of it doesn't cooperate with your holiday schedule, doesn't cooperate with your weekend, it doesn't cooperate with your sleep schedule. The number of times I was awoken in the middle of the night because something's happened in the world. So what is the evening news? Just for context, right? This is the evening newscast that Walter Cronkite once anchored, right? This was like, the most trusted man in America. This goes back to the Truman administration was the first newscast. It's actually interesting when they took it to 30 minutes under Cronkite, they weren't sure whether they could fill 30 minutes. They're like, is there enough news in the world to fill? Yeah. This is the 1960s. There's enough happening.
There's a lot going on.
It was a 15-minute newscast. And so, I'm there now, 60 years later. So Dan Rather has it for many years, and there's, Katie Couric had it for a number of years, and all these various hosts. And it's a 30-minute show. Once you take out commercials, it's about 21 minutes. In 21 minutes, we basically have the challenge of like telling you about your world and your country. I can do 9 to 12 stories, maybe some days 7. And each of those stories, a minute to 2 minutes. And I was being like really generous. If I gave a reporter, I'll give you a minute 45 tonight. Oh, thank you so much. Right. And you're telling incredibly complex stories. So, what is the mix of stories I need to give you, both in terms of what I think you should know, uh, any scoops we have, stories that I think have performed well in the past, not too much politics, but something else, trying to find that mix. And so you'll come in, by the morning, I already have 100 emails in the inbox. We'll have a global meeting where I'm like, okay, London, what's coming out of London today? Tokyo, what do you guys got happening in Asia today? Let's go around the country, West Coast, Chicago, South, Atlanta, what's going on? And I have like 50 potential stories that we now need to decide, like, what are the, 9 to 10 we're doing. Also understanding that, like, throughout the day, things are going to happen, especially since I was there during the first administration, and he tended to make a lot of news within an hour of the actual show. So we might prepare the whole day. He decides to put out a tweet at 5:15 in the afternoon, and now we got to blow everything up.
Yeah.
That story now goes, we're placing with that
Because if
story.
you
That
don't,
story
it's
now,
not news then, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how we treated it. Is like at 6:30, we're going to tell you exactly the latest, most important things happening 6:30, and some of it might have started at 6:22. And so we're going to take this live feed right now, right? And that, to me, as a guy who came up through cable news, made sense. Network, it's a storytelling, Mosh, we got to go in depth. And I'm like, okay. And it's trying to mix those two, which is also, as a boss, what are my core skills? What do we do well as a network? What don't we do well? And so you're mixing both what our skill sets are, what we've done, what the audience wants, what leads to prestige. I mentioned the awards. That was a big thing as a metric internally at CBS.
Sure.
I get the job. They're like, what are we going to do this year that wins some Emmy
So
awards?
it's very important.
To them.
I mean, the Emmy I've heard about, but I didn't. Yeah.
No, I mean, but to me, like, I was like, fundamentally, I take over the show. We've been the third place show out of ABC and NBC going on 25 years. And I'm like, we need to rethink how we do things. So we have all that going on at the same time, which is, how do I take this show that's going down the tracks and start changing the parts as we're going, reflecting the digital reality we live in. That was a whole nother component here. And then add to that I take over as, like, CBS is going through its biggest internal earthquake in years, as we had just come off of firing Charlie Rose. There's ongoing investigations into Les Moonves at, like, all my bosses, right? And so that's all happening internally. So we have the added challenge of not only covering the world, but, like, what are we covering about CBS for our audience? Tonight, CBS fired somebody, and these are some of the people that you might know from watching the show. And so that was yet another challenge. And then, of course, as you know this, as a boss, and I'm managing personnel and people's promotions.
Such a joy.
So there's all these, like, components to it.
What was the moment you said, well, actually, let me push pause there. I'm going to come back to that. You grew up in Chicago.
Yeah.
One of the things.
A Bears fan.
It happens.
It was tough. I would watch the Super Bowl 20 over and over on VHS. We had that tape.
Yeah.
I killed that VHS tape.
I had a brother who played for the Packers, so fortunately I'm a Packers fan. We've done okay.
Yeah, no, that was the one to choose.
I was blessed, or like his career perfectly overlapped with, like, Rodgers, and so it wasn't hard to adopt the green and gold. But you grew up a Bears fan. You grew up in Chicago. But one of the things that I took from watching your TED Talk and then just doing some prep is, my wife and I, we talk about with our 4 kids, like, you can't pick your kids' passions, right? But whoever picked your passion and you're born with it, whatever, like, you had a passion for news and or world events from the day you were born. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, very young age. Like from preschool, like, my favorite book was the World Atlas. Like, my grandmother and grandfather got me a World Atlas for my 4th birthday.
And I think, like, you're 5 years old. You said you lived above, I want to say, ice cream shop. And most 5-year-olds, your parents gave you some money. You go down to get ice cream, but you would come back with, like, a newspaper.
Chicago Tribune, baby.
Chicago Tribune. So was that what it was? You just always just were drawn to that industry?
Yeah, I can't. I'm trying to pinpoint it. Like, you can't decide as a 3-year-old. Like, I just was attracted to, like, looking at the World Atlas and, like, learning about these countries and, like, memorizing maps and capitals. Like, it just was something I enjoyed. And through the maps, I became obsessed with, like, the weather. So, like, my favorite page of the newspaper kids back in the day, there were no weather apps. You went to the back of the newspaper
To the
to
weather.
check the weather
Yeah.
forecast. I saw the
Yeah.
map of America. Like, where is it rainy today?
Yeah.
Where is it sunny today?
USA Today always had a
The
good one.
color, oh
The
yeah.
color one.
They
The
spent the
color
money
one.
to do the coloring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And depending on where you live, you're like, man, it's like red here, but it looks green over there. That's nice. But USA Today had a good one.
And that was amazing. And I'm thankful because my parents watched that, right? They didn't try to force anything on me. They're just like, this kid is really into this. And through connection at his health club, like my father befriends a local anchor in Chicago for WGN. And like I, as a 7-year-old, like am invited to watch the 9 o'clock WGN news in Chicago. What's interesting about WGN, and for those of a certain generation might remember this, there was a show called The Bozo Show, like the kids show. And I think it aired nationally. I was the only 7-year-old that entered that studio and didn't go to the Bozo Show.
You went
which
to
is like a
like,
kid show.
yeah,
I
you
was
went
like, I
to
want to
the
watch the news and
adult
like how he
programming.
does the weather report.
Oh.
And there's a weather forecast. It actually hit me. I had tears last year. Jim Ramsey was his name, and he passed away.
Mm.
And I was like, he took time with me. Like he didn't need. It's like a 7-year-old, like showing me the equipment.
But it
and
made
the
a big
maps.
impression.
Oh my God! Like if I
Yeah.
wasn't already converted, I was like, my life is in news.
So was that how were you growing up, sports school? Like, were you always driven, high achiever, or did you just have a passion for news? So with that, you could go hard, but maybe other things you didn't?
No, I was obsessed. Like school was my thing.
Okay.
Like athletics wasn't that big.
Not going to go play for the
and I wasn't
Bears.
really given much an opportunity. I mean, my parents, like I'm the son of like my dad's an immigrant from Morocco via Israel. He was a cabinet maker, had a cabinet shop, and they worked almost 7 days a week. My mother would work with my dad during the week. On weekends, she worked medical records at a local hospital. So like there were no time. My parents didn't have time taking me to sporting. Like I think I did soccer 1 year when I was like in kindergarten, and that was it. Like so. Really for me, like school was it, and like social studies was it. I was the kid asking the fourth grade
I love
teacher,
social
like,
studies.
what do you mean we don't get points for remembering the dates? Like I remember all the dates. Like I was that, like, and I was like, oh, thank God we don't have to remember the dates. I was like, the dates are like super important, guys. Like what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And so to me, like that, like school was it. Like, and so, and even like, and I do this reflection where like socially, I wasn't like in the popular group of kids, right? So like academically, that was super important to me. And then I was like frustrated. My mom like likes to tell me that I came home frustrated like in 4th grade. It's like nobody else wants to talk about news with me. She's like, you're 9. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna find those people one
I
day.
meant like, we're closer in age, but
Yeah.
like growing up in Chicago, being a student and loving the news and not playing sports, like were there ever moments where kids came at you, like tried to bully you because your interests weren't being the quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, like in gym class, like I was picked last, right? Like, do they even do that anymore? Do they like
No,
pick 2 captains?
No, they don't let people pick you. Just this morning, I coached football for 3 hours. This is football. It's 9th grade. Like they're not men yet, but they're close. And no, they evenly divide the teams, so each team has like a perfect balance of like, skinny, medium, heavy kids. And I'm like, well, just pick 2 captains, let them choose, but no, it's a softer, gentler time.
Yeah, no, of course. But I think it teaches you, I think there's something to that, right? Like
Of
being,
course.
oh, fine, we'll take Mosheh at the end, I mean, I will say I developed an interest in watching sports. Like, I would obsess. I mean, I grew up in 90s Chicago, so watching the Bulls every night.
Gosh,
I get to watch Michael Jordan.
Jordan.
I took for granted. I didn't know as a kid like that this wasn't normal to like
To
have
win
a
every
basketball
year,
team.
every year that he played.
Every year.
Yeah.
Like incredible. I mean, I was also, of course, a Cubs and a Bears fan, so that was more challenging. But like, like I got to meet Ryan Sandberg a couple years ago, Cubs,
Sure.
legend. And I was like, oh my God, like there are a few people. I've gotten to meet presidents and world leaders and see it, like, I don't care. I was a Ryan Sandberg. Like you were a god to me as a kid. And so I think I tried to at least be like, I can't really play well, but like I can talk about sports and all of it.
Part of the reason I ask is we've had guests on, they're really driven. They've gone on to do amazing things. And, sometimes they'll say like, what I asked a question, like, what was driving you? What was your why? And sometimes it's like, well, I was bullied or picked on, and I was like, I wanted to prove something to someone. Did that ever factor in for you?
No, I think it's more, I mean, I will go back to like the sort of first generation thing. My father who came like from nothing in Marrakesh, right? And I was like it came to America not speaking the language and like literally cleaning garbage out of basements, right? Before he started his own business. So to me, like I still remember like coming home with a report card, right? Like A, B, what happened here with the B plus? Like what's going on? Like, and and I think there are so many people I know who are first generation who had the same experience, right? Like, What have I?
Parents are much tougher.
What am I doing in this country? If
Yeah. It's we've I don't know what percentage of the U.S. are first generation immigrant. But like a disproportionate number of my guests have been either first generation or the son or daughter of like someone who immigrated here.
Yeah.
And there's certainly something in that community. And again, there's so many different types of immigrants, but so I'm putting them in one. I recognize that, but there's something about the immigrant mentality that it really is an overwhelming recipe for success in this country. Because I think the country provides a lot of opportunity, but that immigrant mentality is a toughness there.
Well, it's also one of the reasons why I'm so grateful. There was a recent poll, and it led to a big debate on the Mo News Instagram feed. Like that a majority of Americans are no longer proud to be American, right? I was like, this is the only country on earth that my father, you can come to this country, not speaking the language, and within a few years you have your own business. Your kids can, go get whatever they want to do in college. Like your kid can become president, right? Like you're, able to own a home. Like people in Europe, multi-generation, like still renting, right? And so this country, yes, like there's so much more work to be done in this country, and it has its, various failures. But that to me is like that pride, like that I feel, and the luck that I feel that I was born here and that my father was able to come here. Right.
So great student. Great student through high school. You go to college. Where do you go to school?
GW.
GW. Yeah.
So
that's a great, George Washington.
But I will say this: my father's like, "How about we do this? Start a small grocery store." It's like everything that's through the mentality, right? He's like, "We'll start a small grocery store." The deal is if you get the stuff a few days after the other grocery stores, it's much cheaper. Let's start an ethnic grocery store. You'll be a millionaire. And I was like, no. And then they're like, how about community college? I was like, no, I got to go to DC. But like, this is a private university. They're like, how are we going to afford this?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm doing essay contests. I'm like trying to find every scholarship on earth. I'm trying to go through student loans. Like, how can I figure out a way to get there? And, that was a huge push for me. And I also, I watched a lot of TV as a kid. And there was a show called Murphy Brown that got me into like TV news. It was an early 90s show on CBS. And then West Wing came on.
Yeah, West Wing was huge.
And West Wing, is like an aspirational Washington. Like everyone is there for good. It's the opposite of Scandal or House of Cards, where you think everyone is evil. And then there's Veep, which I always tell people, Veep is the most realistic show about Washington. Like it's actually insane how accurate
it's just like a bunch of people
comedy.
who don't really know what they're doing or what's going on, but from the outside, it looks like everything is part of some broader plan.
That's perfect, right? Yeah. That's the thing. I always tell people, like 9 times out of 10 in DC, it's because of incompetent people and not like malicious intent. Like they do that on purpose. They just like have dumb people doing stuff, right? So I go to GW because I'm like obsessed with Washington. I'd be able to make it work. Thank God. My parents are like, okay, we can pay this much. You'll take some loans. I got a work-study job, so I could like pay for part of it. And even then, like the student newspaper, I go over there. I was like, all right, I'm going to go cover. I'm going to see if this news thing is for me. And even the newspaper, once you get to a certain editorial position, they'll pay for part of tuition. So like there's these incentive structures. It's a survival. I mean, it was unique to our college newspaper at GW.
Okay.
But like they were like, okay, like that's part of the salary is like that. And so, and it was like out of necessity. Like I gotta work. I gotta work to make this work. Otherwise I gotta come home and open the grocery store.
I mean, I grew up in the real estate, but retail business is not the grocer's a good spot, but I think you did okay.
Yeah. I mean, listen, Trader Moe's has a ring to it, right? But that's a good one. But anyway, I get to DC and big moment for me. I come in 2000 and the first week of my sophomore year was 9/11.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I'm in Washington. And it was my first day of my internship on Capitol Hill because I wasn't sure whether I was going to go work in politics.
Same with me, first week of my sophomore year.
Yeah. And I'm on Capitol Hill on 9/11, beginning my internship for Dick Durbin, who's still there. He's retiring as a senator from Illinois. Could you see the
smoke from the Pentagon?
Yeah.
I was going to say that's,
in fact,
that's right across the river.
I get back to campus that day. Well, first of all, I'm in the Capitol where they believe the fourth plane was headed, right? The sirens go. I get back to campus. The smoke was blowing from the Pentagon.
I think the fourth plane was heading there. Right.
Yeah, there's a debate as to whether it was the Capitol or the White House, like which the target was. Yeah. They think it was the Capitol.
What was that, Flight 93?
93, the one that the people took the plane back in Pennsylvania.
God bless them.
And And I got back to campus, and it's a different era back then, right? Like we're just hearing rumors, and CNN's
Mm.
like we're hearing there was explosions at the State Department, explosions here, like, and that was honestly life in DC for a couple of months. Is people were like,
It was
you got to
wild.
get out of town this weekend. The next thing is happening,
Yeah, I couldn't imagine DC. I was in LA and it was crazy, you know.
and I'm there, and the cell phones don't work. It's the old school whatever. The landlines are down. The first call that comes through on the landline is the college newspaper being like, "Where are you, man?" And I was like, "You're right." Like,
Yeah.
it's the biggest story.
Shit.
I'm like captivated watching CNN. I was like, "Oh, I'm a reporter. Like, I got to report on this for the campus newspaper." And my
Yeah.
article still is online somewhere because we would write stories from Washington for the college papers all over the country. So, like, my first report of 9/11 is like went into like a couple hundred college newspapers because we were covering it from the student perspective in
Sure.
DC. And anyway, at that moment, I think that like really affirmed for me in the debate of like what I was going to do. I was like, journalism is it.
Do you know that statement, oh, if you find something you love, you never work a day in your life.
Mhm.
Is that true? Because you love journalism and you love,
Yeah.
I don't want to say broadcasting, but like current events and ultimately media. Was it you never felt you worked a day in your life, or is that maybe a oversimplification?
I mean, I'll admit,
I know you've worked
I've,
really
I've
hard, but
had long days, overnighters. Like I've exhausted myself through the years, and frankly, missed important personal moments in my friends' lives and weddings. And like I look back at it now, and I'm like, I gave all that to a corporation that couldn't give a damn years later. But I will say, I feel especially privileged because I see this, as our friends, have kids and expenses and whatever, and they're like moving to do things that they're like, okay, there's revenue in this. And I've never had to do that, right? Like I've been able to live in the media space,
mm,
and I've been very lucky to do that because, like, something that I think attracts me to it, I get to know stuff first. There was a moment in
that is
college
kind of cool.
where I was debating, I wanted to go in the CIA because, like, it has that similar thing, which is
Yeah.
like I get to know stuff. Now, the thing about the CIA or the government is like I can't tell anyone
Can't
about it.
tell anyone.
I do all this.
News, you could text someone like, hey, just heads up, like tonight, you're going to hear about it. This happened. Yeah, it's kind of a cool spot to be in.
It's amazing, like the access, the places I've gotten to go, the people I've gotten to meet has been incredible. But there's always something that I loved when I'm like telling friends about something like, oh, I didn't know that. And like it almost gives me like a high.
Let me ask you. So you started Fox News out of school roughly 2008,
Mhm.
then Bloomberg, then CBS News, right? And then ultimately executive producer, CBS Evening News. Why do you think in 10 years you kind of went from what appears to be somewhat entry level
Yeah.
to a really, really big executive position, overseeing one of, if not the biggest, programming in the country? Like what do you think you did so well or brought to the table in terms of creating value for these companies that allowed you to move up that quick? Because it seems, again, I haven't been in journalism or media, but it seems really fast.
Yeah, it was incredibly fast. I mean, it was faster than they had me in a managerial and senior slots that typically would have taken another decade.
If it's hard to be like accurate in our own self-assessment, but like try your best to like step away from and judge yourself and kind of evaluate yourself. What was it you were doing? Maybe an, our audience can take something from like what were some of the things in terms of how you're approaching executing your job that allowed you to be promoted and kind of rise up so quick?
I mean, I took pride in the fact that like I brought this sort of like I'm gonna bust my butt mentality, right? Like I'm gonna be there earlier, I'm gonna stay later.
So let's double click on that. What does that mean in that industry? Is that you get in at 6 in the morning and stay till 10 at night? Like, we always find a way to wrap in work
Yeah.
life balance conversation on this podcast, but like I assume there wasn't much work life balance.
I mean, I tried my best. Actually, in the early days, like I was trying to do work-life balance because you're in your early 20s. So I'm like, I'm gonna, work all these hours. I'm gonna go out at night. I'm gonna do like 2 hours of sleep.
Yeah,
I'm gonna come back to work. At some point that
yeah.
catches up with you.
Well, I was gonna say that, yeah, that's not necessarily work life, but most people is like, no, you work a little, but you always like take time for everything else. That's burning the candle at both ends, is what
Yeah,
you
no,
did.
you're right.
Yeah,
And that's what I was doing. I mean, I was married to my career, but also, wanting to enjoy myself. But I also like grew up in a house, like we didn't do vacations, right? My dad like had the cabinet shop. We didn't take vacations. Like literally every summer, winter, spring break, when the kids would show up with like a tan, whatever at school, what do? Yeah, I was sweeping my dad's shop. I was gluing Formica. We were
Mm.
installing furniture. So to me, like, I actually thank my wife now at this stage of my life because we just took, a trip. And I was like, I didn't understand the value of vacation because we didn't really take vacations, right? Like we worked. That was the deal. And so I think to me, especially as I hit my 20s there, is like I was super ambitious. Like I had specific ideas of what I wanted. Like I wanted to be the president of the network. I didn't have like a date associated with it, but like that was my life, right? And ultimately, I didn't have, I would have friends and go out, etc. But like my career was my life. My career was my identity.
Why? Like, why do you think you were like that, but a lot of your friends maybe weren't? They'd work and,
Yeah.
they wanted to make more money and get promoted and get bonuses, of course, but why were you just so much more driven to success? Does it get back to that immigrant mentality thing?
That might be part of it. I mean,
Yeah.
also like, listen, I watch struggles in my house, and I think I've talked to other people about this, right? Like, I didn't want to ever have to deal with that, right? I think that not sort of in the front of my mind, but that might have been in the back of my mind. I also just like I loved my work. Like I loved
Yeah.
the news. I also will say this. I give a lot of credit to the mentors and the people who took me under their wings. And I come up, and I think I'm very lucky to have come up through Fox. Because Fox at that time was still a startup. It wasn't even 10 years old when I got there. But I'm an intern at Fox. Fox News is probably 7 years old. And they like very much had a like mentality there where like, look, CNN sends 20 people, we send two and we beat them to the story. And like I was like a 21-year-old intern, like in briefings with the attorney general. And like I remember like a CNN reporter being like, oh, you're the new reporter at Fox. I'm like, no, I'm the intern. Like, and so I think that one is like I feel like they, you know, saw something in me and I worked hard, but also I had mentors who gave me incredible opportunities.
Who it was Fox was Bill O'Reilly? I'm trying to think who was around. It was maybe
Yeah, yeah.
Sean
O'Reilly had one of the shows at night. Yeah, I
Hannity.
Hannity
Was
he's still
Tucker
there.
there yet?
Tucker was not. No, Tucker was wearing a bow tie at CNN still
That's
back
right.
at
Yeah, the
that point.
bow tie.
I was on the DC bureau, so I came up under a guy named Chris Wallace,
Oh,
son
yeah.
of Mike Wallace,
Yeah.
and I will give a lot of credit to Chris.
I've heard that name.
Chris Wallace, incredible mentor. We're still in touch. And like I was his researcher. And he was having me prep him for like Dick Cheney and Bush. I'm like a 22, 23-year-old. And he's like, what should I ask the president? Okay. When I ask him this, what's he going to say?
You said, where are the WMDs?
Well, listen, that was like 2 years of my job, right?
Yeah.
You said last month, Dick Cheney, you said we'd find it. But like that, like gave me a couple of key traits. Like research is key. Know your stuff. Be as smart, if not smarter than them, and in that interview. So I think he as a boss, and he also like sort of reminded me of my father in certain ways, like pushed me hard. Why did we miss that? Why did we miss that? And I think that, that was really a part of it. And then I had a mentor who brought me to Bloomberg and gave me a job overseeing international news coverage at the age of, what would I have been? I was 27. I had no business having that job at 20. I mean, maybe I did. But I will say it was like, it was sort of like throwing me in the deep end. I kept getting thrown into the deep end and I kept figuring out a way to swim.
I asked you the question, what did you do well that, in your opinion, allowed you to rise up so quickly? What do you, what was it that others weren't doing that maybe kind of kept them from the success you had? Like, what were some of the decisions they made, either professionally or as it related to their effort and how they kind of attacked their career that maybe kept them from experiencing the meteoric success you did?
I think something that's true, especially in media, but I'm sure in other businesses, is relationships. It's a relationship game. And so I made a point of like looking at the time the newsroom, my office, right? Like who are the key power players in here, right? Who are the people I need to be building relationships with? Because when key things happen, they are going to be like, oh, I know Moshe. Moshe did that one thing for me, or
Yeah.
like Moshe asked me questions about whatever. So to me, part of my time wasn't just like showing up and sitting at my desk. Like part of the reason is I'm just there. I want to know everyone who's there. I want to know how everything functions, even things that have nothing to do with what I do. So like, we have like these technical parts of TV and whatever, and I'm hanging out and they're like, how does this connect to this? How does this connect to this? Because that's going to come out useful at some point. Because in the studio, when something goes down, I'm like, oh, you should call George in the whatever department. He's
Mhm.
the one who handles that. And I'm like, how do you know that? And so I think, knowing from A to Z how the place operates, building relationships over time
Yeah,
is key.
relationships are so key.
And like, just I always felt like do your homework. So many people just show up and wing it. And I think that like one thing I, made a point of doing was like reading as much as I could about what was in my case, news or stories we were covering. So I could be the guy in the meeting being like, what's interesting about that? You know what happened 10 years ago? And oh, that's an interesting thing. There's so many tools today that we didn't have back then between social media and AI and
Yeah.
and mobile. Like we didn't even have smartphones back then.
No, I mean, AI is a huge difference maker, especially in research, right? Um, so what was the moment you said, I'm going to do something different? I'm in 2019, you depart CBS News, and then obviously COVID's kind of a catalyst to Mo Digital, but
Yeah.
what was it in 2019? Did you just like, was it like not a mid-career crisis? Like I just have to stop? Did you have burnout? What?
A number of factors.
Mhm.
One, CBS in 2018, 2019 was like already becoming a very miserable place to work. They were dealing with a lot of internal issues. It was no longer about covering the news. There was so much internal strife.
Oof.
Again, due to the various the aftermath of all the Me Too stuff that was happening.
Yeah.
And CBS was also based on the ownership and the business side of things. They're trying to cut costs. They're rethinking things. They're not giving a chance for things to work. And I had gone a couple years at CBS. I got to spend building the streaming platform at CBS, like our 24-hour streaming, and it was a lot of fun building digital side there. And then they bring me back to broadcast. So I'm at this like old school show, which has an incredible reputation. Get to say I'm running the show, but like I'm now like back in the 1980s, and I felt like going up against a wall every day when I'm like, we got to change what we're doing here. Like this is a survival thing for us, and you're seeing it unfold today finally in a real way. And I kept going up against people who like very much didn't want change, and I'm like, this is so frustrating. And then add to that when I got the evening news job, it was the first time in my career where the promotion and the job no longer fulfilled me completely.
Mm.
I had reached my like mid 30s. And it was at that moment, incidentally, where like I met my now wife. Like I meet her a few months into that job. And I actually don't know that like I would have survived that job even as long as I did, like without her. And I'm like, oh my God, there's so much more to life than work. Work is frustrating me to no end. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm fulfilled in my personal life for the first time. And that's when like CBS decides like they're gonna move the show to Washington. What else do you want to do here? And I'm like, honestly, I've been here a decade. I've had a number of jobs. Like I don't know what I want, but I know I don't want to be here anymore. And I'm going to go figure that out.
And that led to, I mean, it was kind of, I guess, a little bit of a sabbatical, but
Yeah.
you had a private Instagram, COVID hits, kind of crazy time. And I think the story was on the TED Talk is, you just start kind of, I guess, posting your own interpretation of the news, and maybe it was your wife. Somebody said like, hey, you should make your account public because like more people would find this interesting. Was that it? Because again, now you have this, this much larger platform. It doesn't appear to me to be, oh, I'm going to write out this business plan. I have this vision for this. It just kind of happened.
No plan.
Yeah. Organically.
There was zero plan. I have this sort of sabbatical. I have like 100 different meetings with people. I thought I want to go to documentaries. I was consulting. I was figuring it out. I didn't know. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll go get a job at another network. We'll see. And I remember getting text messages. It's late February, early March. And people kept sending me this like mass text that now it turns out it looks like it was a Chinese intelligence operation saying they're going to shut all the bridges down in New York. They're going to declaring martial law. Like that's kind of.
I think I remember getting something like that.
My uncle's in the army, and he said, Bob, and I got the same thing. I go, first of all, none of you people know anyone in the military. Like, what are you even talking about? And it was so frustrating. And I was like, guys, this is going to create like a riot in New York if like they think the bridges are going to get shut down, right? And I take to Instagram. I go, everyone stop this. Like that was the first time I used Instagram for anything other than like a picture of my vacation, right? And it was an interesting transition for that platform too, because that's really 2020 is the year where you see a pivot on Instagram from like, here are my kids and my pets to like, let's talk about the news.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
And so it just, I hit there at the right moment. Again, no business plan. And we start to get in quarantine, and I'm like, okay, I'll watch the briefing and I'll watch the Fauci briefing, and like, everyone's freaking out. I was always the news guy in the family. So, guys, here's one place I'm putting all the information. And then my wife, then girlfriend at the time, was like, Mosh, this is a thing. And I was like, I had an imposter syndrome. I was like, nobody wants to follow me. She goes, no, people will. And she was right. And so suddenly I started to see all these followers come through. And I think it was by the summer of 2020 when I got a message from one friend being like, you're stuck. Like, you need to keep doing this. Because I was doing it. I was probably posting 100 things a day because we had nothing else to do. And that's when I saw the utility, and I saw how much people were depending on what I was doing. And at the time, 10,000 people, 15,000 people. But there's something here that I should pursue. And maybe this is the thing. Maybe this is the business. I'd made $0 off it at that point. But clearly there was something to be done here.
What was it like? I guess it kind of happened organically, so maybe it wasn't a moment, but really shifting from leading these big teams and platforms at CBS, these massive network teams, to becoming a solo founder and really building something from scratch.
It was a fun moment when I would get notes from my old colleagues being like, thanks for posting that. We're going to do that on CBS today. Like, I feel like everything like got turned upside down.
Oh, that's nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, they have
You're
all
like, give
these,
me a credit at least.
like, I was
Come
like,
on.
they have all these people.
Yeah.
Like, and like, you're looking to my, like, everyone in the team meeting is now looking at my Instagram feed.
I don't know anyone at CBS. I'm not trying to shit on, but that probably speaks to what's going on. That is like, where they're just like, hey, what tell us what to do next. It's
what's interesting out there. What are people talking about? I mean, that was always the question we always asked at news, which is like, what are the interesting stories happening out there? And so I think, I tried to bring that to the feed there. And I will say that there was like, something really refreshing to being able to do my own thing. But there were times where I miss a whole team, right? Like having a team around the world and resources and like being able to fly and like gradually building it. Like I've gone from like just me by myself, and now we're about a dozen people now on the Mo News team, and even like building a brand and figuring out what platforms we're going to be on. Once there was that sort of moment where the audience was like, we want you to keep doing this and we will help you, we will pay for it by launching a Patreon account, then I knew, I was like, all right, there is a potential business here. And let me figure out like what's realistic to be doing on my own and where I need to go. And now how and where can I bring in smart people?
Look, one of the questions I written down was like, what was the gap in the media landscape that maybe you saw and thought that, Mo Media could fill? Or maybe I could ask that question almost looking back, like, what do you think has been the gap that you've filled, that something was missing in terms of the consumer?
Yeah, I think that I underestimated, I think they still underestimate, even when you look at the polling, just how much Americans were ready for new voices and new platforms, and how much they had come to distrust the existing media infrastructure. And we could go back, right? Like we have seen as a society in America, going back the last 25 years, increasing distrust in a number of things, right? You could go back to like WMD in Iraq, as you mentioned, and like how we start to feel about the CIA and intelligence, right? You could go back to the 2008 financial crisis and Wall Street and what happened and what that meant for our view on certain things. You can continue over the last decade. COVID and the CDC and the FDA, right? And we could go agency by agency, Supreme Court, FBI, like we'll go through all this stuff, and some of it based on their own fault, some of it based on certain politicians pushing certain things. I think there's a whole variety of reasons why we've gotten there. But I think the gap we filled was at a time where Americans and frankly people around the world are now turning to social media, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, X, etc., for individuals who they trust for everything from cooking to fashion to lifestyle. News, it was inevitable that they would find individuals who would like, you know what, I don't know about those organizations, but I trust you as an individual. Or in some cases, I'm like, guys, this is from that media outlet. They're like, yeah, but Mosh, thank you for reading that for us. And like determining like, oh, if you know that reporter or you know that headline, I tend to trust you. So I think the gap there and the opportunity was being a trusted individual unattached to one of these larger places.
If I could snap my fingers and you're now the president of CNN, or MSNBC or Fox. I'm not an expert on the ratings. CNN, for some reason, I feel like I know more, is like they're struggling.
Yeah, very much so.
What would you do? Like, they're clearly missing something, unless that medium is just meant to die because there's an evolution. But like, what would you do? What would you do to save the decline that's happening in legacy media? Like you're now the president, and by the way, you have total control of the board.
Yeah.
Let's assume you have, maybe not all the money, but enough money to execute whatever these changes. Like, what do you do? What step by step, like, how would you fix it?
Well, they're each in different places. I mean, even the networks you mentioned, like NBC, CNN, and Fox are all in very different places, right? In terms of profitability, in terms of ratings. But if we're going to like kind of take the theme of like the ones that are struggling right now, right? The traditional and add CNN to the mix. I think that, first of all, you got to be thinking beyond sort of the traditional ways people are getting. Like the reason why they're still so focused on cable news and TV is that's still where a lot of the money still comes in. So you often deal in the media business with this challenge, especially as I've watched
is
the past 10 years.
Is that through the advertisers, like
30-second ads?
The Joe Rogan rails and the pharmaceutical companies, but it's like that's where most of the money's coming from.
That plus sub fees. So you have subscription fees. So basically Charter, Verizon, Fios, all of them are paying you like $3 or $6. Like, for example, ESPN used to charge $9 per subscriber. So when you pay your cable bill, if you still have cable, of your whatever a month, a certain number of dollars is going to ESPN and Disney, right? Yeah. A certain number is going to CBS. So, but they renegotiate these deals every year. And as people have cut the cord and gone to streaming, they're like, we're not paying you $9 a sub for ESPN anymore. We're paying you $4. That's why Disney wants to like get rid of it, right? That's why cable is a terrible business to be in. It was once a great business to be in. It is a terrible business to be in. And so you still have that money coming in. You still have to provide a product for them, but understand that the majority of the audience, everyone under the age of 50, is never going to turn that on. Right? If they're going to take in Today Show content, I mean, we just saw it play out with Colbert. As we're talking here, they just canceled Colbert on CBS, right?
Yep.
The idea that anyone is going to watch, even if you like Stephen Colbert, you're watching the clips the next day, right?
Yeah.
Tuning in at 11 p.m. No. Like, and by the way, you live in an era now of Netflix and Hulu and Disney Plus and all these streamers. Like, that's what you're watching if you're up at that night. You're not like, oh, let me go turn on channel 2 to see what.
There's probably commercials, which my kids don't want to sit through.
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. And they keep adding commercials. And so if I'm in there, it's like, okay, pot number one, like what money where's our money coming from? And how do we ensure we keep that coming from? Pot number two, where should we be going? Where are the majority of people taking in their news? And where do we build up, what we're doing over there? And listen, they have certainly done that, but they have done that in many cases by just replicating their content, like just grabbing the stuff they're doing on TV and throwing it on social media.
Would it be like picking hosts or figures that are more trustworthy than the current crop, and then just putting them on socials and promoting the crap out of those platforms?
So yeah, I mean, you have to embrace the creator thing. It's so interesting because when I worked in television for years, it's not even that long ago, 10, 12 years ago, we're like, it's not about you, it's about the network. It's not about you, it's about the network. As we were pivoting to this era where it is about you.
It's about the personal brand.
And we have now gotten to the point where even when I do an appearance, I'll be on panels on CNN and some of the cable networks sometimes, and then I'll post it on my Instagram account, and people will be like, Mosh, how could you? Like, I thought you were this. I was like, first of all, I'm promoting my brand and there still is an audience there. Yeah. But like, it has come to the point where some creators, even if I take this network job that you're describing in the scenario, I'm going to probably get rejected by the majority of people I come to who are like, I don't want to be associated with you. I'm way better on my own these days. Like, where the audience is, where I like even, there's talk about the Free Press, which is an incredible media startup that, I guess CBS is looking at potentially acquiring as we record this. And there's a lot of people who get that being like, well, I'll never read them again if CBS buys them. Even if they keep it in a cocoon, independent, I think there's a perception out there among Americans that like corporate media can't be trusted. And so I think that's the existential crisis these companies face. So then you got to look at like, what else can we do to build revenue besides just putting out news content, right? What's some creative approaches we can take? And I think like the New York Times is an interesting example. Like they bought, Wordle, and they bought The Athletic, right? Like they've actually taken an interesting digital approach. Because you have to think like, what are our new slices of the pie that we can build out?
Yeah, and leverage, especially New York Times still has a big platform, but leverage their platform, which is We had a technologist on the show a couple of months ago, and she was talking about technology, and now with, Copilot and coding, and the tech isn't even the mode it used to be. It's actually about distribution. And that is the mode. Like, yes, the technology you have is important, but how do you distribute it to the potential customers so that you could get them to adopt, and then, you kind of get your market share. And so New York Times, is Wordle from a game any different than any other game kind of like that? Probably not, but New York Times can put Wordle on their app or put it in theory in their newspaper. And so they still have a powerful distribution channel, not forever because it seems to be slowly waning, but it is interesting how these businesses are using what they have today, even as they see it slowly slip, to try and pivot to something different tomorrow to keep the company alive. You've turned Mo News into a business and a brand, and I'm going to ask a second question about this, but like, what has been the biggest entrepreneurial lesson so far for you?
I think one thing, and I think the one thing I come to as a founder, and it's probably like the founder's dilemma, which is like finding people that will be near as passionate about you, about the brand, but like they never will be, right? Like,
No.
this is my baby.
No one will ever care as much as you.
And that
That's
I
that's
think
okay,
was
but
like,
just,
it's totally okay, right?
Yeah.
It's totally okay until it works out. And I have some,
it's called Mo Media.
yeah, and I have some, like, the team's incredible, but like understanding like that'll be the case, right?
Yeah.
Also, embracing feedback and ensuring that, like, as the years go on and you become more and more, it's hard to unlearn certain lessons. And so being open to feedback and understanding that, like, over time, like, outsiders may end up having like some really incredible ideas, but it might require drastic changes to what you do. So don't get too comfortable in what you're doing, especially in a media environment where things are very quickly adapting.
What has been, I wrote this down while you were speaking earlier, like, what has been the biggest difference between being a successful corporate executive? Because you did that really well, right? And you could probably give a lot of advice there, but you've also done the entrepreneur kind of founder thing. What has been the biggest difference thus far for you in your experience between like finding success in that traditional corporate, ladder versus the total Wild West of being a founder entrepreneur?
I think it, you asked earlier about like why I thought, like why I think I succeeded in moving up so quickly. I think like there's a structure there in the corporation, right? You learn the process, you learn the hierarchy, the jobs you're aiming towards. There's a roadmap there, and there's a pathway there. I think there is, to the entrepreneur side, I don't know what I don't know, and I also I'm a news guy, right? I can help you like put together a great interview, or I know what a good TV segment looks like. But the business side to being an entrepreneur, right? You got to have like the financial side, you got to have that, understanding, and then also have your expertise. So I think it's required me to really develop very quickly. I mean, like, I regret now not spending more time in college, like studying economics, and like, maybe I should have not gotten that master's in international security policy. Maybe it should have been an MBA, right? So I think, that's been a huge, because you can take things for granted within corporate structure. There's the accounting department, and there's the PR department, and there's the editing department. And in the wild, wild west, like, do I need someone who does, are there people who do that? Like, and also very quickly realizing what are the things you're good at, what are things you're not good at, and what are some of the things that you might be good at, but that you hate doing, right? And are taking up too much time. So it requires so much more sort of 360 introspection, whereas I felt like I could sort of just take an easy pathway in the corporate world.
Well, I don't have an MBA, but people who have told me, relative to my experiences, looking at you over the last 5 years of founding and scaling a business, you already know more than you ever would have getting an MBA. Like, because sometimes I'm like, maybe I should go back and get an MBA. Like, why? I was like, I don't know. I feel like there's things I learned. I was like, no.
No. I don't think about going back, but I do think that, like, if I could go back in time and redo it, it would have been totally nice. But I say the same thing to kids interested in journalism today, by the way. Like, there's like master's degrees you can get in journalism, pay like 50 or 60 grand at Columbia. You don't need it.
Mo Media, like, give me just a sample set of your competitors, kind of explain it to the audience. It's like, this is Mo Media. These are some of the other platforms we compete against. And what is it that you guys are doing, and or what is your kind of value proposition where you would tell the audience, like, you should check us out and watch us and subscribe to us over others, and here's why. What do you, in your humble opinion, do really well?
So what's wild about the new media environment is like everyone's my competition, right? Like it turns out that like I technically compete on Instagram and podcasting, whatever, against NPR and CNN, but I'm also competing against Joe Rogan and TikTok creators, right?
Because you're competing for time and attention.
Time and attention. It's the attention economy. And people are getting their information and news from a variety of places these days. In many cases, you might be getting your news and information from people with no journalism background, because that's just what you want. There's a YouTube guy I like, then he does X and Y. I will say that one of the distinguishing factors, one of the reasons why I say come to Mo News, follow us on your platforms, is that we very much take seriously the nonpartisan verified facts. We live in a world where there's a lot of activists or journalists who are hiding their activism, or sort of influencers out there who have a viewpoint on things. And I think it's super important to follow those people, right? Like to get a sense of what's going on, so you're not shocked by what happens. I think some people get so locked in their own opinions and their own ecosystem, in their own bubble, that like when the other side wins, or like, how could that even be? Like, what country do I live in? It's actually very interesting. Oprah became a contributor at CBS News at 60 Minutes after the 2016 election, partially because she was shocked by Trump's victory in 2016, the first time around. Like Oprah. She was a few years removed for her show, and she does these focus groups for 60 Minutes in that time while I was there at CBS, where she's talking to people being like, tell me like why you voted the way you do, because she personally was trying to figure out. So I think it's super important to just be tapped into as many places as possible. And what I think you get from us is that we're giving you that buffet. We're taking the time. Some people are like, why don't you have this up yet? I don't know what happened yet, right? There's a lot of like theories out there. I'm waiting for some basic information. I'm going to be transparent with you about where I'm getting the information. I'm going to be transparent with you when we screw up. I mean, there's a lot of people who are like ready to move on to the next thing. And I'll be like, no, that was a fake story. And sorry, I got caught on that. And let me explain like what happened there and why that won't happen again. So there's a transparency factor you get with us. And we try to actually have a personal relationship with the audience on a daily basis. I mentioned how we used to cover the news at the networks. What I'm doing at Mo News is like, if I get like, 10 DMs in the morning about one topic, I'm like, oh, clearly you're interested. Like, let's go on a journey. Let's figure out this story.
Sure.
And so we do have that dialogue in a way that I don't think you get from other folks. And we try to give you options, right? You have a morning podcast. We put it out every day at 4 a.m. We have the 24/7 Instagram feed. We have an end-of-day newsletter. So we're hoping, depending on how you get your news, that we're finding you in different places.
What advice would you give to someone who's listening, who whatever the field, it could be real estate, could be media, anything in between, would want to launch their own kind of content-driven business, let's call it, like especially if they don't have a big platform to start, because you've really built yours from scratch.
I think two core things. One, consistency.
Consistency. And define, is that a number per day? Because you said you were doing 100 a day. That sounds like
well, that's insane. It was also the height of COVID, and I was unemployed, and like I had time on my hands. And as you've learned in this podcast,
define consistency.
I think I won't put a hard number there, but I would say daily, right? Like there should be something that you're providing. People
video,
daily.
text, newsletter. Is there a medium to start with?
It could be anything. Okay. It could be, are you doing personal advice? Are you a trainer? Are you like giving people an interesting workout? And even just daily, at least a few times a week, or like consistently, like guys, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm giving you XYZ. Consistency is key. Consistency is also key in that you should be seeking feedback and utilizing feedback, right? You might be doing stuff consistently and you're like, Mosheh, it ain't working. And you told me to do this every day. And I'm like, yeah.
It's consistently bad.
It's consistently bad.
Or consistently not connecting. Yeah.
Have you gotten a reaction from people?
Yeah.
Have people told you what they like or what they don't like? Maybe what you're doing is something you want, but nobody wants. And that's the other thing, is what's the audience fit? Like, do you have a customer? And I think that's another core lesson here. Do the thing consistently and figure out if there's a customer for what you're providing. And there might be a customer, you might just be on the wrong platform, or you might be aiming at the wrong people. So like when you think about this, it's very like three-dimensional, right? Like what you're doing might work, but not here. What you're doing, might have an audience, but you're, not reaching them, or you're not marketing it, or you're not listening to the audience, right? And I think at the core of everything, which is if something is going to work, you must be fulfilling something for people. Are you entertaining them? Are you making them laugh? Are you giving them financial advice? Are you giving them news, right? Like, what is it that like is going to keep them coming to you in a way that like will grow an audience and lead them to say, hey, I like what this person's doing for whatever reason. Are you helping them make great recipes that are like, oh my God, my family like loves my cooking for the first time, right? Like it could be anything out there that you're providing. But, I think those are the sort of the core lessons I would think about regardless of what business you're in.
It's been 5 years. You've scaled 12 employees, a lot of followers and subscribers. Where do you see yourself in Mo Media in 5 years from now? Like, what's the vision?
I'm very much at an inflection point. Like, people ask
me. It happens.
Like, I'm at an inflection point. Like, I built something that I wasn't intending to build initially, right? Like, I didn't go into, and I didn't, the story, right? But then we did it. Am I happy where I'm at? Like, is this good? Do I want this to be 10 times bigger? Do I want this to be like a media empire? I'm very as I talk to you today, I'm like, this summer is sort of like I'm trying to have a reflection right now. Am I happy in my life as it is? Do I want to like bring in investors right now and like supercharge this thing? Well, that's a different life that I'm leading.
It's a different life. There's pluses and minuses.
There's pluses and minuses to all of it, like do more zeros matter? In certain ways they do, in certain ways they create more stress. The adage like money doesn't buy happiness, right? And so I'm very happy right now.
But it can buy a boat.
It can buy a boat.
There's a country music song.
And at some point, it can buy you a plane to get yourself to Jeff Bezos's wedding in Venice, right?
Yeah.
That's the next level.
That looked pretty cool.
So I'm reflecting right now on what I want. I'm super happy. I think that we found an audience fit, going back to the previous question. I do know, as somebody who's been watching media evolve with AI right now, that's going to change everything. And I think it is very much...
Give us one change that you're just like, this is coming and get ready.
Customized news. Like, we already live in a world where 20 years ago, like everyone in Chicago got the Chicago Tribune at the end of the driveway, right? And you might watch WGN at night. We now live in a world where like, well, my mix is this podcast and this YouTube channel and this newsletter and this social media account. Okay, get ready for a few years from now when like everyone on earth has a different mix. You don't even have because your AI is giving you the I want the summary of every Matthews mentality. I want my Mo News debrief. I only care about news from the following areas on the following topics. So I think there's going to be an incredible customization. And then of course, are we trusting the AI? I'm playing with AI right now and it hallucinates things sometimes. I'm yelling at ChatGPT. I was like, why did you make that up? Sorry. Right?
Yeah, it does. They're getting better.
They're gradually getting better, but it's moving very quickly.
Yeah.
And so I think when it comes to news and information, we already complain about well, what actually happened today? Or why is it that you think something different than, well, wait for AI? And what does that mean to democracy? There's huge existential societal questions that we're going to be confronting in our lifetimes here, folks. And we thought it might be a couple decades away. It's in this decade.
Yeah, it's iterating really fast.
Yeah.
All right, last two questions. One question. Give me one do this, one don't do that. For the audience, okay, when it comes to, usually we have someone who sits in the chair and they spent their life in the corporate setting or they spent their life as entrepreneurs. You've done both.
Yeah.
You've achieved success at both. Give the audience one do this and one don't do that.
That we haven't already discussed in this podcast.
Yeah.
Do this. Number one, be nice to everybody. You never the world is a big place, but the world is a small place.
I feel like media isn't necessarily known for that. I might be conflating that with Hollywood in air quotes, but I don't know. Somehow I feel like the executives at the media companies haven't always been the nicest people.
No, they haven't, and a lot of them have lost their jobs.
I got you.
Right? I do think that there is something to be said for just like know the assistants, get to know. You never know
Be
what
nice
is
to
going to come
everybody.
in
Yeah.
handy. Like, I mentioned earlier, like part of my success is like you figure out the place because you get to know the janitor. You get to know
And they tell you what's really going on.
some of your best news scoops might come from, and especially in the news industry, the people who no one was paying attention to, but they were listening to everything that was
In
going
the
on.
NFL, when they're, especially with the first round draft pick considerations, they go to the college and they talk to the player, they talk to the coach, they talk to the equipment managers.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, what can you tell me about this player? We're thinking, it's a lot of millions to invest in a human, and they know what they run and what they lift. They know the measurables and the athleticism, but they don't know the person. And the guy, especially nowadays, everyone's so well coached. They do great in their little interviews.
Mhm.
And then coaches, they have a little bit of a conflict because they want the guy to get drafted super high. It reflects well on them. But the equipment managers, like, they'll be like, nicest guy on the planet, like says hi to everyone, always treats us with respect. And then, the next guy, terrible, like throws his stuff in her face, never picks off after stuff, never says thank you. And so it's funny. It's like, be nice to everyone. Another lesson in real estate is the assistant, the intern, the entry level, that could be a shooting star. And 10 years from now, that could be someone in a very high position that you might want to get an interview with. You never know.
I would joke, like my goal in life, for a while I was managing like hiring of interns. Like I want to hire the intern that will be my boss in 10 years.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you just saw our interns, they were taking their summer tests and they were getting rocked.
Yeah.
But like, no, we do, I think about 250 interns a year. It's a lot. But yeah, no, there's some superstars out there. You just don't know who they are at the time.
You know they are. And you also, as a manager, need to embrace those people. I have been so frustrated in my career because I face some of them as an employee, but also fellow man. Like, don't be threatened by that. Like, I think there's so many managers who get threatened by and it's like, embrace the ones that will challenge you. Even sometimes, appropriately challenge you.
Sure.
But like that ultimately will make for a better, and a more successful company.
You said, do this, be nice to everyone. Don't do that. I'll answer half is like, don't be mean to everyone. What would you say? Don't do that. Like if someone's looking to be successful.
This is a journalism lesson, but this is a lesson I think in life. Don't feel the need to always fill silences. Don't talk too much. Listen. The opposite of that would be listen, right? The number of times where you let a pregnant pause happen in an interview, and there's this human need to fill silences because it feels awkward, right? And sometimes the most news that we've made, or the most, like the newest thing we heard from a guest, was because you just paused.
And then they wait, and then they go, okay, let me tell you. And that's when you get the real news.
That's when you got the thing. That's when you have the moment.
All right.
And
keep going, please.
And so I'm actually breaking my lesson by like continuing to talk here because you were about to say something. But my point being that like listen to, because, and then there's also people who are so obsessed with their next question, right? Like the next question, whether you're conducting a job interview or anything in life, you got to get to the next thing, right? Like, what did they just say? Did they just give you an opening? Did they just tell you something you didn't know?
Yeah. In sales, it's a problem when people are on scripts. That's why I'm not a fan of scripts. You can train on scripts, but like don't bring a script to a call or a meeting, because you're like, okay, I'm going to say this, and then they're going to say that, and then I'm going to say this, and you say that first thing, but they don't say that. They actually say something much more profound, or from a sales perspective, a bigger window of opportunity, but you've already moved on to the next thing in your script. And so, it makes sense. Okay. So be nice to everyone and talk less, listen more.
Yeah.
Great piece of advice. And by the way, that isn't just news and media. That isn't just real estate. That's relationships. It's everything,
Oh, yeah. I would say that's been incredible in my marriage. And I tried to, it's so interesting. You learn some of these skill sets in the professional environment, and then you forget them in the personal environment.
Oh yeah.
To your own detriment.
Yeah.
And then you find out, you're like, actually, that works in my personal life. If you treat your marriage, or you treat parenting, you treat anything in your home the way, especially if you're career obsessed, you treat your professional, you'll do incredibly well.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get home, I take things for granted. I was like, well, I wouldn't treat work that way, right?
No.
And marriage is work, and parenting is work.
And a lot of the skills or techniques or tricks, that you learn to accelerate success in a profession, it works just as well. Like, again, I learned to speak less and listen more. I'm nice to everybody. One of my things is always ask, especially if you have a boss, every day, just say, in addition to my job, what can I do to help you today?
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the most powerful things, because eventually your boss is going to make the mistake of answering the question. Actually, there's this thing that I need. I can't get around to it today, but if you could do, it'd be amazing. And that's how you make yourself irreplaceable. That's how you build a relationship with your boss. And that's how you rise up. In my marriage, like I've trained myself, not perfect, but I'm pretty good at this point. Every day, go to my wife, what can I do to help you today? Even though like deep down, I'm tired, I just got done with work. I just got done coaching the sport, and you're just like, but you just train yourself.
Right. You're like, please say no, please say no.
Sometimes you'll be like, actually, there's this thing, and you're like, oh no. But I really have, I'm slowly getting better at this thing called life, where if she gives me something really hard, I still have that visceral, like, oh no, that's hard. But then I'm like, wait a minute. But if I do this, she's gonna be really happy with me.
Mhm.
And that makes my life better. And that's a good thing.
Happy wife, happy life. That's your big lesson, right?
Number one client.
Yeah.
Right. Number one client. All right. For everyone listening, be sure to follow Mosh and Mo News on Instagram, X, and Facebook. Just search at Mosheh. That's it. That's a really good domain.
Mosheh.
Yeah. Mosheh. You can also subscribe on YouTube at Mo News and visit mo.news.
Yeah, and we do a daily podcast, Mo News Podcast, out every morning, where we break down 10 headlines, conversational style, just like we did here. And we have an afternoon newsletter, the Mo News newsletter. So you got a lot of options.
There you go. And if you found value in this episode, don't forget to follow me on X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Just search Kyle Matthews CO and catch more inspiring conversations on the Matthews Mentality Podcast, wherever you listen. Mo, I appreciate you. Love sitting down talking to you. Thanks for coming to Nashville. I'm going to come visit you in New York next.
Can't wait to have it.
All right, brother.